Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cup of Jonah, Day 5, Chapter 5. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. So it's interesting. As you know, we've gone from, I'm just going to dive right in here. We've gone from a consideration of, over this week, we've moved from the question, what is wisdom? And then in the context of what wisdom is, he declares the intention of this book in the context of wisdom and that pursuit of wisdom. And then he starts to ask, okay, well, wisdom is truth, is understanding of different truths, but what kinds of truth does it make sense that we're discussing here? Because if we're talking about God, and there is the possibility that things are revealed beyond it. So one thing I want you to keep in mind as we read today's chapter, I want to draw your attention to something. Thomas doesn't do anything by accident. So there's a curious difference in the way that yesterday's chapter is titled versus today's chapter. So if you remember, Wednesday was on the way in which divine truth is to be made known. So the manner in which divine truth is made known, things about God. And then yesterday we talked about, I'll read you the title of yesterday's chapter exactly because this is important, I think. That the truth about God to which the natural reason reaches is fittingly proposed to men for belief. Now listen to today. Almost very similar, but important difference, I think. Chapter 5, that the truths the human reason is not able to investigate are fittingly proposed to men for belief. So here it specifically says in chapter 4, it's the truth about God to which natural human reason is able to attain to, is proposed for belief. And here it's that truths the human reason is not able to investigate. So it removes the reference to God and it's more general. And I think that's important because sometimes some things are revealed that may not pertain directly to God, but that men couldn't possibly know. Like, we couldn't know the origin of our world. We know that there's an origin. That's, that Aristotle knew and proved. That we can know by natural reason. But I just think that's an interesting thing. It's like that it's important to realize that revelation, the question he's asking is if it's fitting for that revelation, that truths be revealed that are beyond human reach of reason. Anyways, interesting nuance. Chapter 5, that the truths the human reason is not able to investigate are fittingly proposed to men for belief. Now, perhaps some will think that men should not be asked to believe what the reason is not adequate to investigate, since the divine wisdom provides, in the case of each thing, according to the mode of its nature. We must therefore prove that it is necessary for man to receive from God as objects of belief even those things that are above human reason. No one tends with desire and zeal towards something that is not already known to him. But as we shall examine later on in this work, men are ordained by the divine providence toward a higher good than human fragility can experience in the present life. That is why it is necessary for the human mind to be called to something higher than the human reason here and now can reach. Than the human reason here and now can reach, so that it would thus learn to desire something and with zeal tend towards something that surpasses the whole state of the present life. This belongs especially to the Christian religion, which in a unique way promises spiritual and eternal goods, and so there are many things proposed to men in it that transcend human sense. The old law, on the other hand, whose promises were of a temporal character, contained very few proposals that transcended the inquiry of human reason. Following this same direction, the philosophers themselves, in order that they might lead men from the pleasure of sensible things to virtue, were concerned to show that there were in existence other gods of a higher nature than these things of sense, and that those who gave themselves to the active or contemplative virtues would find much sweeter enjoyment in the taste of these higher goods. It is also necessary that such truth be proposed to men for belief, so that they may have a truer knowledge of God. For then only do we know God truly, when we believe him to be above everything that it is possible for man to think about him. For as we have shown, he refers back to chapter 3, the divine substance surpasses the natural knowledge of which man is capable. Hence, by the fact that some things about God are proposed to man that surpass his reason, there is strengthened in man the view that God is something above what he can think. Another benefit that comes from the revelation to men of truths that exceed the reason is the curbing of presumption, which is the mother of error. For there are some who have such a presumptuous opinion of their own ability that they deem themselves able to measure the nature of everything. I mean to say that, in their estimation, everything is true that seems to them so, and everything is false that does not. So that the human mind, therefore, might be freed from this presumption and come to a humble inquiry after truth, it was necessary that some things should be proposed to man by God that would completely surpass his intellect. A still further benefit may also be seen in what Aristotle says in the Ethics. There was a certain Simonides who exhorted people to put aside the knowledge of divine things and to apply their talents to human occupations. He said that, quote, "He who is a man should know human things, and he who is mortal, things that are mortal." End quote. Against Simonides, Aristotle says that, quote, "Man should draw himself towards what is immortal and divine as much as he can." And so he says in the De Animalibus that although what we know of the higher substances is very little, yet that little is loved and desired more than all the knowledge that we have about less noble substances. He also says in the De Cielo et Mundo, that means of the heavens and the earth, that when questions about the heavenly bodies can be given even a modest and merely plausible solution, he who hears this experiences intense joy. How true is that? From all these considerations, it is clear that even the most imperfect knowledge about the most noble realities brings the greatest perfection to the soul. Therefore, although human reason cannot grasp fully the truths that are above it, yet if it somehow holds these truths, at least by faith, it acquires great perfection for itself. Therefore it is written, quote, "For many things are shown to thee above the understanding of men," in Ecclesiastes. And again, quote, "So the things that are of God no man knoweth but the Spirit of God, but to us God hath revealed them by his Spirit." Okay, this is such a beautiful chapter. Thank you for the repost, Templar. Good morning. Morning, Ted. So I love this chapter. He touches on a couple really beautiful things. One, if you guys remember, we talked about, I think it was on Wednesday, we talked about how man's reach out extends his grasp. In other words, we can get some understanding, like the visual image, right? Is that I can touch things with my fingertips, more things with my fingertips that I can't grab. They have to be closer to me for me to be able to grab them, right? So that image in our transferred into our mind, I can have some very basic understanding of a lot more than the things that I can fully comprehend. But what's interesting is when Aristotle talks about what makes man happy, what consists in man's beatitude, is he says, okay, well, we're always asking questions. We're filled with this wonder. This is what drives philosophy, right? So there's this wonder. And as long as I have those questions unanswered, then there is a lack of rest. And that rest is that peace and happiness, that settled arrival, so to speak. Okay. So it makes sense then that understanding God, obviously not comprehending him, but at least comprehending him as first cause of all things is important. So I won't be happy naturally, this Aristotle says, until we understand the first cause as cause. But what Thomas is touching on here is that in order to increase our happiness even more, just beyond the basic capacity of our nature, we've been given to understand more. How beautiful how he connects it to what we were talking about after the reading yesterday about humility and how important it is to have humility in the pursuit of truth and a deeper understanding. And that as we grow in our understanding, if we're doing it properly, let's say, we grow in humility, because to know certain things about the cosmos, to know certain things about God, to know certain things about the activities of God, the love that this omnipotent being has for each and every one of us, it's very humbling. It's also humbling the fact that, okay, so you and I are giving our attention to this book and our mutual conversation afterwards every morning. That's where our attention is focused. We also know that marketing and, a lot of social media today is attention harvesting. So your attention on whatever they direct it to is where they make their money, because then once they have their attention, they can present an ad. Once they have that attention, so grabbing your attention and keeping it as long as they can by feeding you the next kernel to keep your attention is what their focus is. Our attentions as men, limited by our bodies and our matter, as you will, is very limited. Okay, fine. But God is not limited in his attention. In other words, he actually can, this is established by Aristotle, he can give his attention maximally, completely, entirely to each and every one of his creatures simultaneously. Just ponder that for a moment. So we have our God's full and undivided attention 24/7. That's humbling. The original multitasker. Exactly, Ted. You see, yeah, so it's really powerful. It's really humbling. And I don't think we think about that enough, We tend to just kind of, I certainly do, doom scroll from time to time, get caught in this rabbit hole or that one, get distracted by this or that world event. But truly, as this chapter states, the slightest understanding of the highest truths brings so much joy than even a complete knowledge of the lowest and smallest truths approximate to us. So very interesting, very beautiful, very beautiful. But it's been a good week. It's been an interesting little journey. I made sure to set my alarm on your day off. Awesome. Wonderful. I appreciate that, Ted. I appreciate all you guys for joining here this early in the morning. I know for some of you further west than well, here on the East Coast, it's even earlier than 8 a.m. we start. Um, so appreciate you guys. But yeah, so it's really beautiful, and I think as we continue to roll forward through this week, we've already kind of looked at, okay, well, remember the philosophical principle: the first in intention is last in execution. So I think this is why it's important that from the very outset of this book, he sets chapter 2, he sets his intention for the book, which is beautiful. And I think you guys will find delightfully that one of St. Thomas's, one of Aquinas's most beautiful attributes, I feel, to his writings is they're all so perfectly organized. And remember, he said the teacher's office, or the teacher's job, basically, the teacher's function, is to order ideas in the mind of the student and also to present new ones. Most often we think a teacher is primarily to present new ideas, right? To teach, to impart knowledge. That's what we think of. But it's also to order the images and ideas that we have in our mind so that we can think more clearly about and understand more deeply any new information that is then given, right? So, but first in intention, last in execution. And so he said that his intention is to find common ground between those with and without the faith, and to, with reason, both show and reflect on the truths of the faith as revealed, and then also refute any errors, and to have that conversation and to wrestle with those ideas. So from the outset, his intention's clear. And I think that's really a beautiful thing to keep in mind as well. Even just that small philosophical principle, first in intention is last in execution. To have that patience as we go about our day, or about our week, month, year, life, decade, whatever, right? That it's important to set our intentions, but then to appreciate also that those will take time, and those will be the last things to come. And as we accomplish things, that's great cause for rejoicing, and got to start aiming higher, right? But this chapter resonated with me so much about the joy and the pleasure of higher truths, and that by grasping higher and reaching higher for higher, more noble truths that are more difficult, admittedly, surely, there's so much more pleasure there and so much more joy. And it's so much more of a, of course there's pleasure in earthly things, yeah, but the beasts of the field enjoy those pleasures, right? The pleasures of the mind, of the intellect, as it receives or unfolds or unpacks a more noble truth, whether it be about our cosmology, whether it be about things that are accessible to reason, about God, that he is a loving father. That's even in the metaphysics. That he does have his attention completely on each one of us. That's a beautiful truth to reflect on, that brings great joy. And then beyond the truths, as he mentioned today, beyond the truths that are accessible to human reason, those that we can't investigate, that we can't discover on our own, bring even more joy. Tomorrow, or Monday, I should say, Monday, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to ask the question, isn't it folly? Isn't it folly to propose, or to propose to me that I believe something that's above the capacity of human reason to discover on its own? It's a good question, because you could make that argument. You could make the argument that man is perfectly naturally happy by attaining to knowledge that it has the natural capacity for. You can make that argument, which is exactly why that's after this chapter. That's the very next chapter that he talks about. It'll be interesting to see what he says. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's Cup of Jonah. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, subscribe to Phone Booth Podcast. It's phoneboothpodcast.substack.com. Subscribe for free. You get all the notifications when we go live. Also, check it out. You can find Cup of Jonah on Spotify. I haven't put. We'll be back on Monday, Ted. So we're doing this Monday through Friday, and then I've been putting up all of these episodes on Spotify, so you can follow me there. So it's easier to follow and get those notices when a new episode every morning is released. It usually takes me about a half hour to get it downloaded, clip off the beginning 5 minutes of silence, and then upload it to Spotify. So look for those notifications to usually drop at 9 o'clock. So if you prefer, that way, if you prefer Spotify as your means, that's available as well for you. Don't forget Saturday evening. So tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock is the Live with the Phone Booth Boys. That's always a lot of fun. And then, thanks for those again who tuned in on Wednesday to hear Dominic on the Philosopher King podcast at 7. So just lots of good stuff. I must say, though, that I'm getting very attached to our little morning readings. So I really appreciate you guys joining me, and I look forward to proceeding in our contemplation of higher truths together, and that joy together on Monday. Thanks again for joining me for Cup of Jonah. God bless.